Welcome to Dreamy Tales, a place where gentle, relaxing stories will guide you into a deep sleep. On this channel, we'll be sharing soothing stories to help you unwind and forget the worries of the day. If you enjoy these peaceful moments, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you won't miss any of our bedtime tales. Let's create a space of relaxation together each night. Now, before we dive into tonight's story, let's take a few moments to relax your body and mind. Find a comfortable spot to sit or lie down. Gently close your eyes and take a deep breath. Inhale slowly, feeling the fresh air filling your lungs, and slowly exhale, letting the tension in your body gradually melt away. Repeat this 3 more times. With each breath, feel yourself becoming more relaxed and ready to enter the magical world of stories. Now, loosen your shoulders, gently massage your face, and release any remaining tension. Pay attention to any areas in your body that still feel tight, maybe in your neck, back, or legs, and gently let them relax. Next, we'll do a short guided visualization. Imagine yourself in a beautiful garden under the night sky, with the soft moonlight shining down. You can hear the rustling of leaves in the breeze, the sound of water flowing gently in the distance. Feel the cool breeze brushing against your face. Now that your body and mind are relaxed, let's step into tonight's story. But before we begin, remind yourself that you deserve these moments of relaxation, and let go of all worries as you listen to each word. And now, as you are fully relaxed, let's begin our journey into tonight's tale. Allow my words to guide you into a world of dreams and serenity. Relax and listen slowly. A delicate chill, the signature of dawn and earliest spring, permeated the air filtering through Eleanor's slightly ajar bedroom window. It wasn't an unwelcome intrusion. Rather, it acted as a gentle courier, delivering the day's first summons and coaxing her from the deep, restorative layers of slumber. Her eyelids fluttered, then parted slowly, adjusting to the soft, diffused luminance painting the floral patterns of her curtains. The world outside remained muted, veiled in the pearly gray light that precedes the sun's full ascent. For a few precious moments, she remained cocooned in warmth, adrift in that liminal space between dream and wakefulness, savoring the profound comfort of her bed, a sanctuary against the morning's coolness. The simple luxury of not needing to rush, of allowing the day to unfold at its own pace, felt like a gift she gave herself each morning. Finally, feeling the tendrils of sleep fully recede, replaced by a quiet anticipation, Eleanor swung her legs over the side of the bed. The cool wooden floorboards met her bare feet, a brief shock that fully awakened her senses. She reached for her trusty work overalls draped over the back of a chair. They bore the honest marks of yesterday's labor, streaks of dried mud and faint green smudges near the knees, a testament to her connection with the earth. Pulling them on felt like donning a familiar uniform, a signal that the day's purposeful activities were about to commence. As she moved through the quiet rituals of her morning, brushing her teeth, splashing cool water on her face, tying back her hair, the last vestiges of drowsiness evaporated, replaced by a burgeoning enthusiasm. The greenhouse, her haven of botanical life and the heart of her burgeoning flower farming enterprise, beckoned. standing before the kitchen window, cradling a steaming mug of Earl Grey tea. She watched her breath momentarily cloud the cool glass. Outside, the landscape was softened by a gentle haze, the air holding the damp promise of a refreshingly crisp day. While the farmhouse radiated a cozy warmth, the condensation tracing patterns on the pane confirmed the lingering chill of the season's transition. It was, she mused, ideal weather for spending hours immersed in the controlled, balmy environment of her glass sanctuary. A quick, nourishing breakfast of steel-cut oats swirled with honey and topped with a handful of frozen berries from last summer's harvest fortified her for the tasks ahead. The simple meal felt grounding, connecting her to the cycles of harvest and preservation. Stepping onto the back porch, Eleanor paused, inhaling deeply. The spring air, cool and clean, carried the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, the perfume of awakening nature. It brushed against her cheeks, a revitalizing caress, while the fine mist of the lingering fog settled lightly on her skin. A cool counterpoint to the warmth radiating from her tea. She perched on the top step, the worn wood familiar beneath her, and methodically laced up her sturdy, mud-caked work boots. Ready, she stood and made her way across the dew-kissed grass towards the chicken coop, a sturdy structure she'd built with care the previous spring, nestled conveniently near the farmhouse. Her small patch of land, encompassing the house, the vital greenhouse, and rows of expectant garden beds, hadn't felt truly complete without the cheerful presence and practical contribution of a small flock. The simple pleasure of gathering fresh eggs daily, transforming them into golden omelets, and having enough to share with neighbors and visiting family was a constant source of quiet satisfaction. A chorus of soft clucks and contented murmurs greeted her approach. The hens, a mix of buff Orpingtons and speckled Sussex, bustled out from their roosts as she unlatched the coop door, spilling into their enclosed run with endearing eagerness. Eleanor scattered their morning feed, a mix of grains and seeds, across the damp ground. She smiled, watching their comical, head-bobbing dance as they scurried about, pecking enthusiastically at the scattered bounty. Carefully navigating around her feathered charges, she ducked into the coop itself. The air inside was warm, filled with the scent of pine shavings and contented chickens. A quick peek into the nesting boxes revealed the day's treasures. Several smooth, warm eggs, ranging in shade from pale cream to rich brown, nestled snugly in the clean hay. Gathering them gently, feeling their satisfying weight, she placed them carefully into the wire basket kept just inside the coop door for this purpose. With a soft word of thanks to the industrious birds, she secured the coop and carried the basket back towards the house, leaving it safely on the porch before turning towards her primary destination. Her chicken-tending duties complete, Eleanor walked past the still-clucking flock, their sounds a familiar backdrop to her rural life, and started down the gravel path leading to her modest flower farm. The rhythmic crunch of the stones under her boots was a comforting sound, a percussive beat accompanying her thoughts. The light, damp breeze whispered around her, carrying hints of pine from the nearby woods and the ever-present scent of moist soil. Her mind leaped ahead, picturing the vibrant colors and delicate forms waiting within the greenhouse walls, the established blooms, and the tender, hopeful seedlings that represented the future of her business. This transitional period, poised between the dormancy of winter and the full exuberance of spring, was unequivocally one of her favorite times. The air possessed a sharp, invigorating quality, a clean slate washed by winter rains, yet threads of pale sunlight managed to pierce the thinning clouds, whispering a promise of warmth and growth to come. The walk itself was a mindful journey, taking several minutes and offering ample opportunity to absorb the surrounding beauty. Her property was cradled by gently undulating hills, their slopes cloaked in fields of grass still glistening with morning dew, their contours softened and made mysterious by the lingering fog. The rich, loamy fragrance of the earth seemed to rise to meet her. Eleanor smiled instinctively as the air filled with the complex symphony of birdsong. The trees surrounding her farmhouse and lining the path were alive with feathered performers. She could distinguish the flute-like, ethereal notes of wood thrushes and the cheerful, persistent chirping of returning finches. Avian heralds recently arrived from their long southern sojourn. Each trill and whistle felt like another confirmation that the grip of winter was truly loosening. Eleanor held a deep, abiding respect for these small, resilient creatures. Their innate ability to navigate vast distances, flying thousands of miles with unerring accuracy, year after year, struck her as nothing short of miraculous. It humbled her that, despite human advancements, the precise mechanisms behind their migratory feats remained partly shrouded in mystery. Scientific theories abounded: sensitivity to the Earth's magnetic fields, celestial navigation using the sun and stars. But the complete picture, the intricate tapestry of instinct and environmental cues, felt like one of nature's closely guarded secrets. It added a layer of wonder to their return each spring. Feeling a surge of connection, Eleanor softly called out a greeting to the unseen musicians in the trees. "Welcome home." It was a freedom she cherished, this ability to converse with the natural world without inhibition, a stark contrast to the self-consciousness she might have felt performing such an act amidst the concrete canyons of her former city life. Here, surrounded by acres of quiet solitude, such interactions felt entirely natural. En route, she deliberately paused beside the raised garden beds where, back in the crisp days of late autumn, she had carefully planted hundreds of bulbs. What had been mere papery, light brown globes tucked into the cooling soil just before Halloween had now undergone a magical transformation. The earth was erupting in color. Elegant, cup-shaped tulips in jewel tones, bright, sunny daffodils nodding their heads in the breeze, and intensely fragrant hyacinths perfuming the air. These early bloomers were the first vibrant splashes against the lingering monochrome palette of winter, and their appearance never failed to ignite a spark of hope and eager anticipation within her. She envisioned filling buckets with their cheerful stems later in the week, designing joyful bouquets that would capture the very essence of spring's arrival. Not feeling any pressure to rush, Eleanor knelt, the dampness immediately beginning to seep through the reinforced knee of her overalls. she gently traced the velvety texture of a deep plum-colored tulip petal with her fingertip, marveling at its perfect form, before rising and continuing her crunching journey down the gravel path. By the time the familiar shape of the greenhouse came into full view, the persistent morning chill had painted the tips of her ears and nose a delicate pink. She took one final conscious breath of the cool, invigorating air, appreciating its clean bite, before pulling open the slightly creaky, weathered wooden door. Instantly, a wave of warm, humid air enveloped her, thick with the scent of damp soil and growing things. It felt like stepping into another climate, a pocket of gentle tropics nestled in the temperate landscape. Her shoulders, unconsciously hunched against the outdoor chill during her brisk walk, immediately dropped as her muscles relaxed in the welcoming warmth. This transition from the crisp outdoors to the balmy interior was a daily pleasure, a physical reminder of the nurturing environment she had created. Allowing a moment for her senses to acclimate to the shift in temperature and humidity, Eleanor surveyed her domain. It had been 3 years since she, with determination and borrowed knowledge, had constructed this greenhouse, the nucleus of her flower-growing venture. Pride swelled within her as she gazed around. Long wooden benches lined the space, laden with pots of varying sizes. A diverse tapestry of colorful flowers stretched towards the back wall. Some plants were mature, already showcasing their glory. Cascades of vibrant petunias, cheerful pansies with their expressive faces, sturdy geraniums. Interspersed among them were flats filled with younger, more fragile life. Rows upon rows of tiny seedlings she had painstakingly sown weeks earlier. These represented potential, requiring continued dedication and care before they would be ready to unfurl their own blossoms. Today, Eleanor decided, the seedlings deserved her primary focus. Moving carefully along the narrow soil-dusted aisles, she let her hand drift lightly across the tops of the tiny plants. They were little more than delicate sprouts at this stage, clusters of fresh green leaves holding the intricate blueprint of future beauty. She selected a flat brimming with young nasturtium seedlings and carried it purposefully towards her potting bench. The bench itself, a sturdy wooden structure coated in layers of chipped green paint that told stories of countless potting sessions, was her main workstation. Setting the flat down, Eleanor reached for her well-worn denim apron, tying its strings securely around her waist. Its familiar weight felt like part of her work ritual. From a hook, she retrieved her trusty, sharp pruning clippers, sliding them into the leather holster attached to one of the apron's deep pockets. Thus equipped, she was ready to begin. The first order of business was transplanting the rapidly growing nasturtium seedlings into individual small plastic pots, granting their roots the space needed to expand and thrive. She tipped a generous mound of dark, rich potting soil onto the bench surface. Methodically, she ran her fingers through the earthy mixture, breaking up any clumps, ensuring a fine, consistent texture, perfect for nurturing young roots. Satisfied with the soil's condition, she retrieved a stack of clean pots from beneath the bench and began filling them, firmly but gently packing the soil to eliminate large air pockets. With a row of pots prepared, Eleanor turned her attention back to the flat of seedlings. Using delicate precision, she eased one tiny plantlet from its communal cell, careful not to damage the tender stem or fragile root system. She nestled it into the center of a waiting pot, gently patting the fresh soil around its base, offering a silent encouragement. "Grow strong, little one." She repeated this process, a quiet, focused rhythm developing. Fill pot, gently extract seedling, place, pat soil, repeat. With each transplant, she felt a connection, a sense of stewardship for these nascent lives. Once an entire tray was filled with newly potted seedlings, she carefully unwound the long green hose hanging nearby, pulling it over to the potting bench. Adjusting the nozzle to produce only a gentle trickle, she patiently watered each pot, watching the moisture darken the soil. She knew this immediate watering was crucial. Saturating the soil helped it settle intimately around the roots, eliminating air gaps that could hinder the plant's uptake of essential nutrients and moisture. After completing the entire flat of nasturtiums, Eleanor straightened up, wiping her soil-streaked hands instinctively on the sturdy denim of her overalls. She carefully placed the tray of freshly watered, individually potted plants onto an empty space on one of the benches. A smile touched her lips as she envisioned the cheerful, peppery orange blossoms that would soon emerge. Nasturtiums held a special place in her early farming memories. During her first season, she'd been drawn primarily to their vibrant blooms and unique shield-shaped leaves, finding them perfect for adding color to hanging baskets and providing a whimsical touch to her bouquets. It was only after a seasoned farmer at the market casually mentioned their edibility, the flowers, leaves, and even seed pods, that a new dimension opened up. She'd had to exercise considerable restraint not to pluck and sample every spicy bloom while working. Their versatility impressed her deeply, and she eagerly anticipated offering them at the farmer's market the following month, knowing customers would appreciate both their visual appeal and the surprising, zesty flavor their flowers could add to salads and garnishes. As Eleanor moved deeper into the greenhouse, her eye caught movement on a tall stand of milkweed, a plant she cultivated specifically to support monarch butterflies. A cluster of tiny, bright orange aphids coated a section of the stalk. These minuscule insects were essentially plant vampires, meticulously sucking the nutrient-rich phloem sap. Peering closer, she observed a small troop of black ants diligently patrolling the aphid colony, scurrying over and amongst them. Eleanor recalled learning about this fascinating interaction years ago in an entomology course during college. It was a classic example of mutualism. The aphids excrete a sugary, liquid waste product called honeydew, a coveted food source for certain ant species. The ants actively milk the aphids for this sweet substance by gently stroking them with their antennae. In return for this reliable food source, the ants fiercely protect their aphid livestock from predators like ladybugs and lacewings. Despite the biological marvel of this relationship, aphids spelled trouble for a flower farmer. A significant infestation could weaken and stunt plants by draining too much vital sap. Eleanor made a mental note. Time to order ladybugs. Releasing these beneficial predators into the greenhouse was a standard, eco-friendly tactic among organic growers. She much preferred this natural form of pest control over chemical sprays. Over the years, she had learned invaluable tips and tricks through conversations with fellow vendors at the bustling farmers market. A supportive community she deeply valued. She'd weathered numerous aphid skirmishes in her time as a flower farmer, and her go-to counter-strategy was always purchasing a batch of ladybugs online. They typically arrived in a small cardboard box, ventilated with tiny holes, buzzing faintly within. Releasing them felt like unleashing a tiny, charming army. She would carefully open the box and gently disperse the beetles throughout the greenhouse, letting them establish themselves among the plants. It still amazed her that these seemingly delicate, polka-dotted insects were such voracious predators, capable of consuming up to 50 aphids per day. Farming constantly offered lessons and surprises. A few months after introducing her first ladybug battalion, she'd encountered another unfamiliar insect crawling purposefully over her plants. These creatures were elongated, spiky, and vaguely reptilian, looking like miniature alligators. Concerned about a new potential pest, she captured a clear photograph with her phone and showed it to one of the veteran farmers at the next market day. His initial chuckle confused her until he explained that the fearsome-looking bug in her photo was, in fact, a ladybug larva, the juvenile stage of her aphid-fighting allies. He reassured her that, far from being a threat, these larvae were even more voracious aphid consumers than the adults. Eleanor learned that during its lifespan of roughly a month, a single ladybug larva could devour hundreds, potentially up to 400 aphids. The experienced farmer patiently explained the ladybug's complete metamorphosis. The adults she released had laid clusters of tiny, oblong orange eggs, usually on the undersides of leaves where aphids congregated. These eggs hatched into the alligator-like larvae. It was a relief to know these strange critters weren't pests, and fascinating to learn they wouldn't remain in that form for long. Within weeks, they would enter the pupal stage, attaching themselves to leaves and becoming immobile as they underwent their incredible transformation. A couple of weeks later, a fresh generation of familiar red and black adult ladybugs would emerge, ready to continue the cycle and keep her plants healthy. Shaking off the reverie of insect life cycles, Eleanor refocused on the task at hand. Weeding. Pulling out unwanted sprouts always induced a slight pang of regret. They were, after all, just plants trying to survive. However, she knew it was a necessary chore. Weeds compete fiercely with cultivated flowers for essential resources: sunlight, water, nutrients, and space. Letting them gain a foothold would compromise the health and beauty of her cherished blooms. Grabbing an empty bucket, she began a slow patrol up and down the aisles, meticulously scanning each pot for any interlopers. Common culprits like chickweed, clover, and opportunistic grasses were gently but firmly removed, roots and all, and tossed into the bucket. This task, while requiring attention to detail, was relatively mindless, freeing her thoughts to roam. As she worked her way through the greenhouse, her mind drifted to the future trajectory of each plant variety. She pictured the tiny seedlings she'd recently transplanted, envisioning them growing robust and strong, eventually gracing her stall at the farmer's market with their unique charms. Passing pots filled with taller, more dramatic flowers like snapdragons and cosmos, she anticipated cutting their long stems, imagining them arranged into stunning bouquets. These arrangements would celebrate milestones, perhaps becoming part of a bride's special day, or conveying love and appreciation for Mother's Day. Each plant held a story, a potential destination. Her concentration was pleasantly broken by a flash of black fur darting between pots of fragrant geraniums. It was Sooty, the sleek, independent greenhouse cat. Sooty had simply appeared one afternoon the previous year, a mysterious arrival who quickly decided the warm, humid, plant-filled environment suited her perfectly. She'd made herself indispensable, not just as a companion but also as a surprisingly effective hunter of the small lizards and occasional mice that also sought refuge in the greenhouse. Now, she moved with silent grace, perhaps stalking an unseen insect or merely enjoying the territory. Eleanor often found herself watching Sooty, envying the cat's seemingly effortless existence. Lounging languidly on sun-warmed benches, occasionally nibbling on the catnip plants Eleanor grew specifically for her, patrolling her kingdom with quiet confidence. It seemed a life of simple, cozy luxury. Setting down her weeding bucket, Eleanor walked over to the corner where she kept a small bowl and refilled it with Sooty's favorite dry food. The cat immediately abandoned her explorations, trotting over with a soft meow, rubbing against Eleanor's legs before settling down to crunch contentedly. Eleanor took this as her cue for a brief pause, sinking onto the gravel path beside the cat, gently scratching behind Sooty's ears, rewarded by a deep, rumbling purr. Weeding completed for the day, Eleanor moved on to watering, another task she found deeply meditative and satisfying. There was something fundamentally nurturing about providing this essential element for life. She carefully uncoiled the hose again, the green plastic cool against her hands, and began the patient process of drenching each pot thoroughly, ensuring the water penetrated deep into the soil. The gentle sound of the water showering the leaves and soil, the cool droplets occasionally splashing onto her hands, felt refreshing. She inhaled deeply, drawing in the complex perfume of the greenhouse, a blend of damp earth, decaying leaves, the subtle sweetness of various blossoms, and the green scent of foliage itself. It was a familiar, comforting aroma, the smell of growth and her own dedicated work. As she moved among the benches, the sheer variety of colors surrounding her was striking. Vibrant reds, sunny yellows, deep purples, soft pinks, and pure whites. This kaleidoscope made her think about the intricate dance between flowers and their pollinators. Her entomology class had illuminated this vital relationship. Different pollinators, she recalled, were often attracted to specific colors and flower shapes. Bees, for instance, showed a preference for blues and purples, favoring blooms like forget-me-nots and black-eyed Susans. Butterflies, with their different visual spectrum, tended to gravitate towards brighter shades, oranges, reds, and yellows, found in flowers like marigolds and yarrow. Nocturnal moths, logically, were drawn to white or pale-colored flowers, such as gardenias or moonflowers, which are more visible under low light conditions. Eleanor marveled at this elegant symbiosis. The insects received a vital food reward in the form of nectar, and in return, they inadvertently facilitated the plant's reproduction by transferring pollen. It painted a picture of the natural world as a place of intricate harmony and intelligent design. Passing a robust cluster of purple coneflowers, Eleanor could almost visualize a fuzzy, plump bumblebee diligently exploring the flower heads. It would land, perhaps slightly clumsily, its tiny legs gripping the petals as it probed the central cone for the hidden nectar reservoirs. While absorbed in its sugary meal, its fuzzy abdomen would inevitably become dusted with powdery yellow pollen. When this bee visited the next coneflower, some of that pollen would brush off onto the receptive stigma, the sticky central part of the flower, initiating the fertilization process that would lead to seed development. The bee, focused only on its immediate need for sustenance, would unknowingly serve as a crucial link in the plant's life cycle. Later, as the water showered a pot brimming with multicolored pansies, Eleanor paused to admire the delicate, dark lines radiating from the center of the lower petals. She knew these markings weren't just decorative, they were nectar guides, visual cues directing pollinators like bees and butterflies towards the flower's center, where both the pollen and the nectar reward awaited. Sometimes scent alone wasn't enough. She pictured a butterfly, perhaps a painted lady, wings gently fanning the air as it searched for sustenance. Attracted by the pansy's fragrance, it would land, and the nectar guides would act like landing lights on a runway, leading its long, straw-like proboscis directly to the nectar source. As it sipped, pollen granules would cling to its body and legs, ready to be transported to the next flower it visited, hopefully finding their way to another receptive stigma. Once every pot had received a thorough soaking and water began to drain freely from the bottom holes, Eleanor emerged from her pollination musings. She turned off the tap at the spigot and carefully rewound the hose onto its hanger, ensuring it was free of kinks. Her next task involved deadheading, the practice of removing spent or fading blooms from the plants. This wasn't just about tidiness. Snipping off old flowers redirects the plant's energy away from seed production and back into creating new buds and stronger growth, ultimately resulting in healthier, more floriferous plants. Clippers retrieved once more from their holster, Eleanor began her rounds again, this time examining each plant for blooms past their prime. When she found a wilting or faded flower, she made a clean snip at the base of its stem. She felt a gentle respect for these fading beauties, believing they still deserved a moment of appreciation even in their decline. Playfully, she began adorning herself with the dead-headed blossoms. A slightly drooping petunia was tucked behind her ear. A few colorful pansy blooms were woven into the barrette, holding back her hair, mingling with her curls. She filled the bib pocket of her overalls with a vibrant collection of clippings: snapdragons, geranium petals, calendula heads. By the time she'd worked her way through the greenhouse, she resembled a whimsical flower sprite, festooned with the day's faded glories. Just as she was making her final snips, a polite knock sounded at the greenhouse door. Eleanor remembered. She'd arranged for a regular customer to pick up a custom bouquet that afternoon. Feeling momentarily self-conscious about her flower-adorned appearance, her slight embarrassment vanished when she opened the door. The customer's face broke into a wide, delighted smile at the sight of her favorite local flower farmer looking so festively botanical. The woman was one of Eleanor's most loyal patrons, regularly making the drive from the neighboring town specifically for the unique quality and freshness of the flowers grown in Eleanor's greenhouse and garden beds. They chatted warmly for a few minutes, catching up on local news and the progress of the season. Then, Eleanor excused herself to assemble the arrangement. "Feel free to wander and enjoy the plants while I put this together for you," she offered. "I won't be long." A familiar tingle of creative energy flowed through Eleanor's fingers as she set about selecting blooms for the bouquet. Always one of her most enjoyable tasks. She moved purposefully through the greenhouse, her experienced eye picking out the most perfect specimens. She chose lush, fully open purple anemones, delicate sprays of white baby's breath, vibrant orange ranunculus, and stems of fragrant stock, snipping each cleanly near the base. Stepping quickly outside, she made a brief detour to the garden beds near the path, gathering a handful of cheerful yellow daffodils, their trumpets embodying the very spirit of spring. With a generous armful of glorious blooms, Eleanor carried them next door to her small, dedicated work studio. A simple shed adjacent to the greenhouse, equipped with a large table, buckets, vases, and rolls of ribbon. Setting the flowers temporarily in a bucket of cool water, she began the preparation process. Methodically, she stripped the lower leaves from each stem. Leaves left below the water line in a vase quickly rot and foul the water. Then, using sharp floral snips, she cut each stem cleanly at a sharp 45-degree angle. A technique she'd learned maximizes the surface area for water absorption, helping the cut flowers stay hydrated and fresh for longer. Working deftly, she selected a clear glass mason jar as the vase and began arranging the flowers. The deep purple anemones served as the dramatic focal point, their dark centers drawing the eye. She carefully placed the supporting flowers around them, considering height, texture, and color balance, turning the jar frequently to ensure the arrangement looked appealing from all sides. The smaller, airier flowers like baby's breath provided contrast and lightness. Finally, she added several sprigs of greenery, fern fronds and eucalyptus stems, tucking them in expertly, allowing some to cascade gracefully over the lip of the jar, adding a natural, slightly untamed feel. Stepping back, Eleanor critically appraised her creation, turning the vase slowly one last time. Satisfied, she added the finishing touch. A simple bow tied around the neck of the mason jar using a strip of natural burlap ribbon, lending a touch of rustic charm that suited her farm's aesthetic. Feeling a quiet pride in her handiwork, she carefully carried the completed bouquet back into the greenhouse. Her customer looked up from inspecting a pot of delicate blue forget-me-nots, her eyes widening in appreciation as she saw the arrangement. As always, she expressed effusive praise for Eleanor's artistry and the vibrant beauty of the flowers, already picturing how they would brighten her dining room table. After settling the payment and exchanging warm farewells, the customer departed, the crunch of tires on the gravel path signaling her exit. Alone once more in the peaceful quietude of her greenhouse, Eleanor decided it was time for a well-deserved break. She retrieved her water bottle and sank onto the tall wooden stool beside the potting bench, taking several long, refreshing sips. Having briefly stepped outside and then into the studio, re-entering the greenhouse felt like returning to a familiar embrace. The damp warmth, the pervasive scent of earth and blossoms. She closed her eyes for a few moments, consciously relaxing her shoulders and letting the peaceful atmosphere wash over her, resetting her energy. Rummaging in the pocket of her overalls, she produced a slightly crumbly granola bar, enjoying the simple pleasure of its sweet, crunchy texture while she rested. As she munched, the gentle rhythmic drumming of light rain began on the fiberglass roof panels above. The sound deepened the sense of sanctuary, making her feel wonderfully warm, safe, and sheltered from the elements. Feeling refreshed and restored by her brief respite, Eleanor was ready to tackle the final major task of her workday: repotting some of the larger, more established plants. Many were beginning to show signs of being root-bound, their vigorous growth demanding more space than their current containers allowed. The plants in her care thrived under her attentive cultivation, growing quickly, and upsizing their pots regularly was essential for their continued health and development, ensuring their root systems had ample room to expand. She selected several plants: a vibrant cardinal flower boasting impossibly bright red spikes, a flourishing fuchsia heavy with dangling pink and purple blossoms, and a large potted fern whose fronds were beginning to crowd its neighbors. Carefully carrying them one by one back to the potting bench, she prepared larger containers and fresh potting mix. Starting with the cardinal flower, she faced the familiar challenge: extracting a large plant from its pot without breaking stems or damaging delicate blooms. Years of practice had honed her technique. Firmly grasping the base of the plant while tipping the pot, she gently wiggled and tugged until the entire root ball slid free. As expected, the roots were thick and healthy, densely woven into the exact shape of the old pot. Using her fingers, she carefully teased apart the outer layer of circling roots, encouraging them to spread outwards into the new soil. She placed the plant into the larger pot, ensuring it sat at the correct depth, then backfilled around the root ball with fresh, nutrient-rich potting mix, patting it down firmly to eliminate air pockets. She repeated this careful process with the fuchsia and the fern, finishing by giving each newly repotted plant a generous drink of water from the hose, settling the soil and minimizing transplant shock. She knew these plants, now provided with ample room to grow, would soon reward her efforts with even more vigorous growth and abundant beauty. After carefully returning the heavier, repotted plants to suitable spots on the benches, Eleanor surveyed the greenhouse. Satisfied that she had accomplished all she needed to for the day, she wiped the clinging soil from her hands onto her apron one last time before untying it and hanging it neatly on a hook near the bench. She took a final, slow look around, absorbing the scene. The rows of thriving plants, the evidence of her day's labor etched in disturbed soil and rearranged pots, the lingering scent of water and earth, the quiet presence of Sooty now curled asleep on a sack of potting mix in a warm corner. A sense of deep contentment filled her. Then, pushing open the door, she stepped back out into the cool, rain-washed air of the late afternoon. The rain had stopped, leaving behind glistening moisture on every surface and the clean, sharp scent of petrichor, the smell of rain on dry earth and gravel. Eleanor ambled slowly back up the drive towards the farmhouse, her gaze sweeping across the now clearer hills, noticing how the retreating sun managed to find gaps in the clouds, casting patches of pale golden light across the damp fields. Reaching the porch, she sat on the steps once more to pull off her muddy boots, leaving them beside the door to dry. Before stepping inside the house, which seemed to beckon with promises of warmth and rest, she remembered the basket of eggs collected that morning and brought it indoors. Inside, she carefully transferred the eggs from the basket to a ceramic bowl in the refrigerator, the simple act feeling like the final punctuation mark on her workday. A profound sense of accomplishment washed over her. There was nothing more demanding her attention, no urgent tasks left undone. The entire evening stretched before her, an empty canvas of quiet time. Yearning for comfort after hours spent on her feet, Eleanor shed her work overalls, leaving them near the door for tomorrow, and changed into a pair of soft, worn sweatpants and her favorite old t-shirt. Comfort enveloped her. She filled the kettle and set it on the stove, the familiar routine soothing. While waiting for the water to boil, she knelt before the small wood-burning stove that dominated one wall of her cozy living room. The house held a slight chill from the damp day, and the promise of a fire was irresistible. She carefully arranged crumpled paper, dry kindling, and a few small logs inside the stove's iron belly. Striking a long wooden match, she tossed it onto the paper, gently coaxing the nascent flames with the fire poker until they caught the kindling, crackling and popping cheerfully as they began to consume the logs. Soon the kettle whistled its high-pitched song. Eleanor poured the steaming water over a tea bag in her favorite mug, inhaling the fragrant steam. Carrying her tea, she settled deep into the cushions of her plush, slightly overstuffed couch. She wrapped her hands around the warm mug, letting the heat seep into her fingers, a comforting counterpoint to the memory of the day's outdoor chill. She sipped the hot tea slowly, savoring the flavor and the profound silence of the house, broken only by the gentle clucking sounds drifting from the chicken coop outside and the soft, rhythmic crackle of the fire in the stove. Gradually, a tangible warmth began to radiate from the stove, permeating the living room, chasing away the last remnants of the day's coolness and amplifying the sense of cozy sanctuary. Feeling utterly content, deeply satisfied with her day's productive connection to the earth and its cycles, Eleanor leaned back further into the couch, pulling her favorite hand-stitched quilt up to her chin. A soft, involuntary smile touched her lips as her thoughts drifted back to the greenhouse. Picturing the rows of nascent life, the promise held within each seedling, the vibrant colors waiting to unfold. She envisioned her future farmer's market stall, overflowing with terracotta pots brimming with healthy, blooming plants, and galvanized buckets packed tightly with colorful bouquets, ready to bring joy to others. She hadn't explicitly planned on an afternoon nap, but nestled deep in the couch's embrace, lulled by the tea's internal warmth, the comforting scent of wood smoke filling the air, and the gentle murmur of the fire, she felt her eyelids grow heavy. Effortlessly, inevitably, she drifted off to sleep, enveloped in the peace of her chosen life.